Hey everybody. So yesterday a really big trade took place between the Calgary Flames and Carolina Hurricanes. And you know th- this was actually a pretty major deal that went down. The Calgary Flames acquired defenseman Noah Hanifin and forward Elias Lindholm from Carolina in exchange for defenseman Dougie Hamilton, forward Micheal Ferland, and prospect Adam Fox. Um, this is an interesting deal, and this is a big deal. Um, and it's just you can tell that both teams at this point are really looking to shake things up. Both teams missed the playoffs last year. Both teams had disappointing seasons last year, and they obviously were looking for changes at this point. And um, I don't know if there's any clear winner just on paper right away. It's just a lot of swapping pieces, basically. So, Noah Hanifin is only 21 years old. He was a very high pick for the Carolina Hurricanes. Um, but he hasn't developed into that star defenseman that people thought he was going to be. He was somebody who, when he came out of Boston College, people were thinking like, this could potentially be a Norris Trophy guy. Now he's only 21 years old, so let's calm down a little bit. His career is just getting off the ground here, but I don't think he's developed at the pace that Carolina would have liked, which made him movable. Um, he certainly hasn't flown out and been a superstar from the get go. Now that doesn't mean he's not never going to be. Defensemen take longer to develop than forwards. That's a very well known fact in hockey, and to judge a defenseman before they're 24 or 25 years old is just dumb because they take so much longer to develop. And Hanifin could end up being that good. He still has a long way to go and a lot of learning to do. But he hasn't been the guy the way that Carolina thought he was going to be the guy. On the other hand, you have Dougie Hamilton, who is kind of in a similar situation. He was drafted by Boston, played a few years there, then got traded to Calgary, played a few years there. He's obviously older, he's 25. Um, but Dougie Hamilton, when he came out of junior and was drafted, he was supposed to be a next superstar defenseman. He was supposed to be really good, and he is good. He's had 50 points in a season before. He's someone who can definitely get you 40 plus points every year from the back end. He's been good, but he hasn't been great. Hamilton to me is like a really good number three defenseman, and yeah, but he's not that top pair guy that people thought he was going to be. He's not a Victor Hedman. He's not a John Carlson. He's not a Drew Doughty. He's in that, he's a solid second pair defenseman. He is not a top guy. Hanifin's kind of in a similar situation at this point where I don't really see him as a top guy, but if he's in your second pair, then that's pretty good, and he can play well and be a valuable asset there. So they kind of have swapped young, underperforming defensemen. And then up front, they swapped forwards. Lindholm goes to Calgary and Ferland goes to Carolina. Lindholm is just, he's a scoring forward, although he only had 16 goals last year, I believe. So it's not like he's a huge goal scorer, but he's someone that can play on your second or third line and give you some secondary scoring, which is nice. Micheal Ferland, I think, is the most interesting piece in this entire trade because Micheal Ferland had 21 goals last year. He's somebody who is good around the net. He's a big body, and he can knock in rebounds. He can screen the goalie. He goes to the net. All those things. He can score goals that way. But he's also extremely physical, and that is something that the Carolina Hurricanes have not had in a number of years. Carolina is consistently one of the softest teams in the league. They don't fight. They don't really hit. You never see Carolina in, super physical games. They haven't had players like that in a number of years. It was very clear that their organizational philosophy was much more skill-based, much more Elias Lindholm-based. But with Rod Brindamore there now coaching, maybe they're going to change that up a little bit. And bringing in Micheal Ferland gives them a power forward, physical player. They haven't had a guy like that in a long time in Carolina. So that I think makes him the most interesting piece of this whole trade, because is Carolina changing their philosophy a little bit here? Maybe they're not going to try and be the softest team every year anymore. And Ferland is a one of those players who can score 20 goals, but he can also fight 4 or 5 times a year. He can get in on the forecheck and throw big hits. He adds a dimension to the Carolina Hurricanes that they really haven't had at all in recent history. So I would like to see Carolina get more players like Micheal Ferland, get players into their bottom six who are more physical than what they've had over the last few years, and be a more physical team and be a team that isn't so easily pushed around and so soft, because man, they've been really, really soft the last few years. Like we're talking like finishing the year with single digit number of fighting majors soft. That's yeah, I think it's time for a change of philosophy as far as that goes in Carolina. They haven't made the playoffs since 2009, so obviously going soft hasn't worked as far as making them that much better. So I'd like to see them get a little bit tougher. I think Ferland does that a lot, and that's really a good stepping piece for them to build a more physical team, and maybe put some wingers or in bottom pair defensemen in there that can play a little bit more physically and not get pushed around as much. On the other hand, losing Micheal Ferland takes away from Calgary's physicality as well, and Lindholm is certainly not a physical player. He is not somebody who's going to go in there and play the way that Micheal Ferland did. Now, Calgary last year was one of the more physical teams in the league. You've got Travis Hamonic on the back end. You've had Ferland up front. You had Garnet Hathaway up front, Troy Brouwer, Ryan Lomberg played some games. So Calgary was one of the more toughest teams in the league last year. So losing Ferland doesn't necessarily really hurt them that badly in the physicality department, because they have other guys there that can do that. They have Garnet Hathaway still there. They have Travis Hamonic on the back end. Troy Brouwer, assuming he doesn't get bought out, is going to be on a fourth line spot. They have guys there that can play that way. So it's really interesting to me to see Carolina going from how they've been the last, say, 3-4 years to adding a player that plays the way Micheal Ferland does. And that's just really interesting to me. And it'll be interesting to see if they move that way as an organization as a whole. Clearly, the NHL is a speed and skill league at this point, but you still have to have somebody who, or at least a couple of players who can bang bodies and play physically. I mean, look at the Stanley Cup final this past year. In Washington, you have Tom Wilson, who's one of the toughest guys left in the league, and plays really a 1990s style of hockey. And you've got Brooks Orpik on the back end, who was pretty physical. He obviously got traded to Colorado and isn't there anymore, but he was there last year. Devontae Smith-Pelly, Jay Beagle, they can bang bodies. I mean, it was not soft teams in the finals this year. And on the other hand, in Vegas, you have Brady McNabb and Derek Englund, two very tough guys on the back end. You had Ryan Reeves on Vegas playing on the fourth line. I mean, yes, it's a speed and skill league, but physicality still plays a major role in the game. And we saw a lot of the most successful teams this past season in the playoffs had physical players in their lineup. So I think adding Ferland is a big deal for Carolina, because they have not had players like that in a long time. So that's pretty much all I've got on this. I don't know if there's a clear winner right out of the gate. I think we're going to have to see how things play out, how these guys perform on their new teams, see how the teams perform with these new players. Dougie Hamilton's on his third team already in the NHL. That might say something. maybe about how he is in the locker room, or maybe it's just he hasn't lived up to the expectations on the ice. But that's interesting to be 25 years old, a very high draft pick, and already on your third team in the league. It'll be interesting to see how Noah Hanifin responds going from Carolina to Calgary. He could either absolutely break out there, or he could end up being a pretty big bust as far as the draft, where he was drafted is concerned. And then obviously I've talked a lot about Ferland and what he brings to Carolina and how that seems like a philosophy change for the Hurricanes. So very interesting trade. We'll have to wait and see how it plays out. Not sure there's a clear winner right off the bat, but we'll just have to wait and see. Let me know what you guys think of the trade down in the comments below. Let me know if you think Carolina is kind of changing their philosophy a little bit by bringing in someone like Ferland, because it's not what Carolina has been doing for the last few years, but they have some, new people in there now. It's a whole new organization. So let's see, maybe they realize that they need to have at least some players who can stand up for themselves and their teammates in the lineup. Like, comment, share, subscribe, follow on social media, check out offthewallhockey.com. All those links are in the description below. Keep spreading the word about this channel. I love watching it grow, and let's keep it growing. Thank you guys all so much for watching, and I'll talk to you soon.